When you start asking how long a woman can truly stay without physical intimacy, the first thing you must understand is that for her, intimacy is rarely just about the body. For most women, it begins in the emotional space long before it ever reaches the physical. A woman who feels emotionally disconnected, who feels unseen or misunderstood, can go a surprisingly long time without craving physical closeness because the foundation she needs for that intimacy is missing. Emotional safety is the doorway. If she feels judged, dismissed, or unappreciated, the idea of intimacy becomes less appealing, no matter how much time passes. But when she feels secure, when she feels her emotions are respected, that's when her natural desire for physical closeness grows stronger. It's important to realize that intimacy is not just about satisfying a physical urge, it's about deep connection. For women, touch and closeness are often tied to trust, comfort, and vulnerability. Without that emotional base, the act can feel empty, and many women would rather go without it than give themselves in a way that doesn't align with their feelings. That's why you'll see some women able to stay months, even years, without intimacy if they don't feel emotionally safe. They are protecting themselves because the absence of emotional depth makes the physical meaningless. But the opposite is also true. When a woman feels deeply connected, when she feels a man sees her, values her, and respects her emotions, the absence of intimacy begins to weigh on her quickly. She begins to crave closeness, not just for physical satisfaction, but because it validates the emotional bond she already feels. Without that bond being reinforced, doubts creep in. She wonders, does he still desire me? Am I still wanted? Is our connection as strong as I believe it is? And those doubts can be louder than the absence of touch itself. This is why emotional presence is so critical. A woman can go without intimacy, but she cannot go without feeling understood. The longer she goes without that emotional assurance, the less interest she will have in seeking physical closeness. On the other hand, when her emotional needs are consistently met, physical intimacy becomes a natural extension of her feelings, rather than just a physical urge. So, how long can she truly stay without intimacy? The answer is tied less to time and more to the quality of the connection she feels. If the emotional bond is weak, she can go a long time without missing it. But if the emotional bond is strong, she will crave that closeness sooner, because for her, intimacy is the proof of the connection she values most. That's why understanding the emotional foundation matters, because when that's missing, the desire for intimacy fades. But when it's present, no woman can stay without craving that closeness for long. When we talk about how long a woman can stay without physical intimacy, one of the biggest factors that shapes that answer is attraction and desire. A woman's body and mind respond differently depending on the chemistry she feels with a man. If there is little or no attraction, she can go long stretches without thinking much about intimacy at all. It won't weigh heavily on her because the desire isn't sparked. But when there is genuine attraction, when she feels pulled toward a man emotionally and physically, that desire surfaces quickly and the absence of intimacy begins to feel noticeable. Attraction for women isn't always instant in the way it often is for men. For many women, desire builds gradually through small signals. The way a man carries himself, how he communicates, the confidence in his presence. All of these things add up to create a level of pull that eventually makes physical closeness feel not only natural, but necessary. When that desire is triggered, she doesn't just want to be near him emotionally, she begins to crave him physically too. And the longer that desire remains unmet, the harder it becomes for her to ignore. On the flip side, if the attraction is weak or inconsistent, a woman can hold off much longer. She may rationalize the absence of intimacy, distract herself with other parts of life, or simply not feel the urgency. But desire is powerful. Once a man has ignited that spark, it becomes difficult for her to separate her emotional feelings from her physical cravings. Attraction accelerates her timeline, where she might have been able to wait weeks or months without intimacy. Once she feels that deep connection and desire, days can start to feel long. This is why desire is so closely tied to the question of how long she can stay without intimacy. It's not about a set number of days, weeks, or months. It's about the intensity of the chemistry. A strong attraction shortens her patience. She doesn't just want attention, she wants closeness. She doesn't just want to talk, she wants to feel. And this pull is something that logic can't completely override because it comes from biology as much as it does from emotion. The key here is that desire feeds itself. The more she feels drawn to a man, the less she can resist the thought of intimacy. If that attraction is not nurtured, it fades and she can go without. But if it's kept alive through emotional connection, confidence, and presence, then the absence of intimacy becomes harder and harder for her to endure. So when asking how long she can truly stay without intimacy, understand that the real answer lies in the strength of her attraction. Without desire, she can wait indefinitely. With desire, her patience runs out quickly because attraction always pushes her closer to wanting that physical connection. When considering how long a woman can stay without physical intimacy, you have to look beyond the surface and understand the balance between her psychological and physical needs. For many women, intimacy is not just about satisfying a physical urge, it's about reinforcing the emotional bond they share with someone. However, that doesn't mean the physical need isn't there. Women, like men, have bodies that crave closeness, touch, and connection. They may suppress these desires for a time, especially if they don't feel emotionally safe, but ignoring them indefinitely creates tension, frustration, and a sense of emptiness. A woman's psychological needs are often at the forefront. She wants to feel loved, secure, and emotionally connected before intimacy feels meaningful. If those psychological needs aren't met, she may choose to go without, convincing herself that physical closeness doesn't matter as much. But deep down, the body has its own rhythm. The need for intimacy doesn't simply vanish because the mind pushes it aside. Over time, the absence of touch or closeness can create subtle cracks in her emotional state, leaving her feeling less connected, less desired, and less fulfilled. What many men overlook is that for women, the physical and psychological are intertwined. If her psychological needs are fully nurtured, if she feels valued, respected, and emotionally secure, her physical desires often rise to the surface with more strength. The longer those desires go unfulfilled, the harder it becomes for her to remain patient. She begins to long for that validation that only physical intimacy provides. Because it isn't just about pleasure, it's about proof. It's proof that she is wanted, that her partner is present with her, that the bond is alive. On the other hand, when a woman goes extended periods without intimacy, even if her emotional needs are met, doubts begin to form. She may wonder if she is still attractive to her partner, if he still sees her the same way, or if something has changed in the relationship. That absence begins to play on her psychology, creating insecurity where there was once confidence. And once that insecurity sets in, it can affect the way she engages emotionally as well. This is why ignoring the physical side of intimacy can never be sustained forever. Even the strongest emotional bonds need the reinforcement of touch, closeness, and physical connection. When intimacy is absent for too long, the relationship begins to feel more like a friendship, and the spark that separates it from every other connection in her life begins to dim. She may not say it outright, but her actions will show it. Less warmth, less patience, and a quiet sense of distance that wasn't there before. So while a woman may last without intimacy for weeks or months, depending on her mindset, over time, the body and the mind always meet. Her psychology craves reassurance, her body craves connection. And when both go unmet, it becomes impossible to ignore. When we ask how long a woman can truly stay without physical intimacy, one factor that cannot be ignored is consistency in connection. A woman might be able to handle gaps in intimacy for a while, but when those gaps stretch on too long, she begins to question the strength of the relationship itself. Physical intimacy is not just about pleasure or attraction. It's about reassurance. It is the unspoken signal that her partner still desires her, that the bond is still alive, and that she is still chosen. Without consistency, doubt quietly begins to take over, and that doubt can feel heavier than the absence of touch itself. Women tie intimacy closely to commitment. Every time she experiences closeness, it reinforces her sense of being loved, wanted, and secure in the relationship. But when that consistency disappears, even if she tries to stay patient, she starts wondering if the attraction has faded, if her partner's attention is drifting, or if she is no longer as valued as before. These thoughts can grow louder with every day of absence, and over time, they erode the connection she once felt so confident about. Consistency is important because it creates rhythm. In the same way people need regular communication to feel close, women need regular intimacy to keep the bond strong. Without it, the relationship feels unstable, unpredictable, and uncertain. She may stay, she may try to rationalize it, but internally, she will feel the lack. Intimacy is her reassurance that the relationship is still alive and breathing. When that reassurance is missing, her patience has limits. This doesn't mean that a woman expects physical closeness constantly. What she craves is balance. The knowing that her needs matter, that she is desired, not just occasionally, but consistently. A long absence might not break her right away, but if the absence becomes the pattern, she will feel disconnected. And once she feels disconnected, intimacy loses its spark because she no longer feels the emotional closeness that makes physical closeness meaningful. This is why consistency is more important than intensity. A single moment of passion cannot replace the comfort that comes from ongoing connection. It's the regular gestures, the steady reassurance, the repeated affirmation through intimacy that makes her feel truly secure. When those are missing for too long, her threshold is reached. She may start pulling away emotionally, questioning the future, or even looking elsewhere for that consistency she cannot live without. So the answer to how long she can stay without intimacy is not just about time, but about the steadiness of the connection she feels. If the consistency is missing, even a short absence feels long. But if intimacy flows regularly and she feels desired often, the relationship thrives and her patience never has to be tested. When intimacy is missing for too long, one of the biggest impacts it has on a woman is tied directly to her sense of self-worth. Physical closeness is not just about the act itself, it's a reflection of how desired and valued she feels. When a woman is consistently intimate with her partner, it sends a clear message. She is attractive, she is wanted, and she is still the object of his desire. But when that is missing, she begins to question herself. She may wonder if she is still beautiful, still appealing, or still enough. Over time, these quiet doubts can grow into heavy insecurities that affect the way she sees herself, the way she carries herself, and the way she connects emotionally. Women crave attention, not out of vanity, but because attention is often the confirmation of their femininity. When intimacy disappears for too long, she may start to feel invisible in her own relationship. She notices the silence, the lack of touch, the absence of that validation, and she begins to fill in the blanks with her own thoughts. Maybe he doesn't want me anymore. Maybe he's bored. Maybe I'm not as attractive as I used to be. These thoughts slowly chip away at her confidence, and what was once a secure and strong woman can begin to feel uncertain in her own skin. This is why physical intimacy carries such weight. It's not just about satisfying desire, it's about feeding her self-image. When she feels desired, her confidence radiates. She becomes more open, more nurturing, and more connected. But when she feels neglected, her energy shifts. She may become distant, withdrawn, or even resentful because she no longer feels seen. That lack of attention doesn't just affect her personally, it affects the entire relationship. The longer a woman goes without intimacy, the more the absence becomes a mirror reflecting back insecurities she never wanted to face. For some, it can even lead to resentment not only toward their partner, but also toward themselves. She might start comparing herself to other women, questioning what they have that she doesn't. She might become overly critical of her own appearance, convinced that the lack of intimacy is somehow her fault. And when that spiral of self-doubt begins, it is incredibly difficult to reverse without effort and reassurance from her partner. This is why attention and intimacy matter so much. A woman who feels desired doesn't need constant reassurance because her partner's actions speak louder than words. But a woman who goes too long without intimacy starts needing reassurance in other ways. And even then, words rarely replace the validation that physical closeness provides. Her body and her heart crave that reminder that she is still valued, still attractive, and still the one he chooses. So while a woman may endure the absence of intimacy for a period of time, eventually the impact on her self-worth becomes too heavy to ignore. And once her confidence is shaken, the relationship itself begins to feel unstable. Every woman has a breaking point when it comes to the absence of intimacy, and that breaking point is rarely just about physical desire. It is about the emotional consequences that come with being untouched, unseen, and unacknowledged for too long. At first, she may rationalize the absence. She may tell herself that her partner is busy, stressed, or simply not in the mood. She may try to stay patient and convince herself that it is only temporary. But over time, the lack of intimacy begins to plant deeper doubts in her mind and heart. She starts to feel like the connection is slipping away, and that silence begins to weigh heavier than any words could. The emotional consequences of prolonged absence are profound. Without intimacy, a woman may feel disconnected, almost like a stranger in her own relationship. The closeness that once made her feel alive and bonded now feels distant, and that distance can create a painful loneliness, even when she is lying right beside her partner. It's not just about missing the act itself. It's about missing the emotional reassurance that comes with it. Intimacy tells her she is still loved, still chosen, still desired. When that message goes silent for too long, she begins to question if she is still any of those things. That questioning doesn't just stay internal. Over time, it changes how she behaves. She may withdraw emotionally, stop sharing openly, or begin putting up walls to protect herself from rejection. She might not even realize she's doing it, but the emotional bond starts to thin. And when that bond thins, physical intimacy becomes even harder to rebuild, because she no longer feels the safety and connection that make her want to give herself fully. In some cases, the breaking point goes further. A woman who feels neglected for too long may start to lose her attachment to the relationship altogether. She may start imagining what it would be like to be with someone else who notices her, who desires her, who makes her feel alive again. This isn't always about betrayal or disloyalty. It's about survival. The human heart needs connection, and when it is starved of it for too long, it looks for nourishment elsewhere. The absence of intimacy also impacts her confidence in the future of the relationship. She begins to wonder if this distance is permanent. She asks herself if she can really stay in a situation where her needs are not met, where her desires are ignored, and where her worth feels diminished. That questioning is the sign of her breaking point, the place where patience runs out and emotional consequences become too heavy to carry. So when we talk about how long a woman can go without physical intimacy, the answer isn't measured in weeks or months. It's measured by how long she can carry the emotional weight of not feeling wanted, not feeling loved, and not feeling connected. And when that weight becomes too heavy, her breaking point is reached.